Right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's Community and Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee, held here in the Council Chamber and being broadcast online. So we have members in the chamber today, and we also have members on Teams. So for those on Teams, can I please remind you to mute any mobile devices, tablets, consoles, etc., etc. Also, this event is being broadcast live, so please do be aware of that and keep the language PG-13 at the bare minimum. For members in the chamber, when you are addressing the meeting tonight, please do just face directly towards your Perspex protection screen because that's where the microphone is. That'll be allow everyone to hear you as successfully as you can. So, to new members, welcome to this committee. We don't need to vote for chair because of the because it's already been done on the full council. So, item number 1, apologies for absence.
No apologies, Chair.
Okay. Okay. Item number 2, minutes of the previous meeting. I'll go through them page by page quickly for everyone's benefit. So, page 5. Does anyone have any questions on it? Page 6. Page 7. Page 8. Page 9. Okay. If is everyone in favour of voting in favour of those minutes being a true record? All those in favour? Thank you. That's unanimous. I'll go quickly sign that. One down, about 12 to go for me later. Okay. Item number 3, any declarations of interest? Nope. Item number 4, public question time. Were any public questions submitted?
None received, Chair.
Okay. Item number 5, member question time. Was any member?
Again, none received, Chair.
Okay. So, moving on to the meat of tonight's agenda, which is basically to look at the work programme for going forward to the new municipal year. So, first of all, to new members, once again, welcome to the committee. To returning members, welcome as well. I'm certain everyone will enjoy themselves, especially as this year the meetings are actually dated in advance, as opposed to having to hold extraordinary meetings all the time. So, with today's agenda, we've got the work programme for places and growth and resources and assets as detailed in the pack. Now, we have the executive members joining us on Teams remotely, so the questions will be to them. However, we do have only the executive members this evening. So this is all about talking about the strategy and the process of thinking behind that strategy. It's not going into operational details because I don't think executive members are going to have the exact nitty-gritty on, I'm going to pick on Pauline here, on how a specific road is going to be repaired, resurfaced and maintained, for example. So can members direct their questions purely around the strategy on that regard? And what we will take from this is to learn which areas we think that will be very useful going forward for the rest of the municipal year when we need to look at things. So who's starting off? Yes, please, Callum.
Yeah, so thank you, guys. So on page 14, members, you can see this was the work programme as agreed by Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee at the end of last municipal year. So obviously there's already a lot of items on there. We've got 18, and this isn't a list of what we have to complete this year. This is more of a that there are some things on there that is a statutory responsibility. For example, reviewing flood risk management and community safety partnership. But there are other things on there which are more optional, things that you can decide to do, but we don't absolutely have to. So really, this evening is it's looking at this, it's looking at Annex A, and then it's also looking at some of the priorities that Place and Growth and Resources and Assets have supplied very helpfully as their sort of priority list for the year, and working out whether or not there's anything additional you want to add, if there's anything you want to remove, and how you want to prioritise that and get sort of as robust a programme in for the year as possible, really. That's all I had to say.
Thank you for that, Callum. So just for members in the meeting, as mentioned, we've got the background of the existing one. Parts benefit, as he's just joined. We have executive members here tonight, but we don't have the officers, so it will be strategy only. So big concepts, not individual nitty gritty. So the first 6.1 is local plan, local development. Who's taking that initially?
It will be John Kaiser's been free.
Okay, so I believe it's over to you, John. Can you hear us?
So I can hear you. Sorry about that.
No problem.
This is with regards to the local plan update, is it, or is it a general housing strategy? I'm not quite clear.
I was just going down the pages, John, at where it was 6.1, where it's the project policies and expected changes. So basically, we've got on this particular page of page 17, we've got local development scheme, local plan update, Central and East Berkshire, joint minerals waste plan, neighbourhood development plans, major roads contract, or that may be Pauline, drain sensor. It's a mix and match, but if you have a brief that you want to go through, and we can go through it in individual aspects, that'll be fine.
I can fill in some of the blanks. Obviously, it's not all my portfolio. As the local plan is pretty straightforward in the fact that it's currently going on at the moment. It will be going out to consultation again around about July, August, with a view of it, the consultation being done by the time we get to Christmas. That's, again, I mean, it's not my area really, it's Wayne Smith's. With regards to our housing policy, or our development policy with regards to the council's own, developing the council's own assets, it's very much, we made a commitment last year, which was a commitment, well, it started the year before, at the end of the year before, where we spoke about delivering 1,000 homes over 4 years, with a 5% return for the council, and that would be via our housing company. That's Loddon Homes, which is a registered provider, and Berrybrook, which is a just a development vehicle that we use. Moving on from that, we've decided that we should be a bit more ambitious. Part of the problem with affordable homes is the median rental is not always affordable. I mean, the argument about affordable is what is an affordable home? Well, the definition I've been told is up to 80% of market rent. Obviously, there are a lot of people out there that can't afford that. So we need to seriously think about how we extend our social housing project, how we develop more. Now, we have approximately 2,700 homes which are social houses, and their rents are probably in the region of 40 to 50% of market rent, which makes an awful lot of difference. We have we bought these houses. We paid £90 million for them because we bought them back off the government, because when we were receiving the rents were being sent up to all over the place. It was going to other councils, and it meant that we didn't have enough money really to rectify and repair our own housing stock, which was a bit of a disaster. So by borrowing the £90 million, it allowed us to collect all those rents and hang on to all those rents. Now, we found that not only are those rents funding the full repayment of of the housing stock, but it's also allowed us to get the housing stock to 100% of decent home standards, and that's because we've been getting the money. So we're now on the next phase of that, and what we're looking at is the HRA, which is the Housing Revenue Account, which is a ring-fence fund, and we've had a number of years of surplus there. So what we're looking to do is to actually build more social homes. So the 145 figure, we're looking to do the 1,000 homes in 4 years of 5% return, but we're trying to enhance that by up to 100 houses a year, a large proportion of which will be affordable homes. Now, the way we're doing that is we will either build those affordable homes, or in some cases where we have developers which have built homes that they can't market, or they want a guaranteed market for them, we will be quite prepared to step in the breach and purchase those homes, as what you would call S106 homes, which are the houses which are delivered by developers. We have a policy which is 40% of all homes built in the borough will be affordable. So we will be able to buy a number of those homes. A percentage of them will be affordable, and a percentage of them will be social housing. So it's quite ambitious what we're planning to do. It requires borrowing. All of these things require borrowing. I mean, it means we would have to borrow the money, but I had an interesting situation the other day. I was looking at some of the land we own. We have a piece of land. I won't tell you where it is. It stands in the council's books at £125,000. If we as a council invest £8 million in that, its development value is £30 million. Yes, £30 million. So we've taken an asset that's in the books at £125,000. We've put £8 million into building the homes, and we've turned it into an asset that is worth £30 million. Now, we're not doing that on the basis of selling that asset, because we believe that the value lies in the rents that we can generate from this level of investment, and that will allow us to put that money straight back into the revenue account. And of course, the revenue account is where we pay for all the services. So not only are we increasing the capital value or asset base of the council and the housing stock, housing people in homes that they can afford, making a profit in the housing company. So really everyone's a winner, I guess. And that's a plan for the housing company.
Thank you for that, John. That was quite enlightening. Does anyone have any questions? We'll cover the housing area first, I think. Members, do you have any questions on the strategy behind this? Silent so far. So I've got one for you, John, because you mentioned a percentage of social housing. Now, I'm not going to ask for you to give me an exact figure, but what percentage would you and the team behind the housing team want to see in that, from giving you the best investment return on that regard?
Of course, Guy. Social housing will always sit in the HRA. Somebody's listening in yours. Okay, that's better. Thanks. It's difficult to say. It's really constrained by what the headroom, and what I mean headroom is the borrowing ability of the HRA and what appetite we as a council have for borrowing money. The average council house that stands in our books at the moment, Guy, is £32,000. So if you work on that basis, the amount of headroom we've got, because I don't think there's many homes in the borough that stand in the books at £32,000, it gives us an awful lot of headroom, which will enable us to purchase. I would like to think of the additional 100 homes that we're planning to build, between 30 to 40 of those homes will actually be social housing, which, when you consider that we haven't added anything to the council's housing stock for probably the last 3 years, that's quite impressive.
What is the current numbers on the council housing stock?
2,700 approximately. It goes up and down depending on people purchasing the homes. Some of the homes we sell to replace with more suitable homes. We don't get many large 4-bedroom social homes, and there are people from developers, but there are people that still need 4 and 5-bedroom homes, and so you may find that we sell something which is it will either be a house which requires an awful lot of work that we're not prepared to do. We put that onto the open market. That generates the funds to allow us to deliver or buy, in a lot of cases, to buy a house which is more suitable for the requirement.
Okay, that's very interesting. Thank you for that, John. Has anyone else got any questions on this? Shirley.
Thank you, Guy. Thank you for that, John. Very interesting. Quick question is more about not so much about building new houses, but one of the is about the strategy for upgrading houses so that that are already in our housing stock to get them up to as close to carbon neutrality as possible. And I just wonder where that sits in the plan in terms of, I know some of our older stock, it's going to cost quite a lot of money, I'm guessing, to get them up to an acceptable standard.
You're right, Shirley. I mean, stuff that we're building will have to conform with the latest, and we're already planning for houses that we've got on the stocks. They won't have any gas because of the carbon footprint. Wherever we can, we will work with residents, because the residents do benefit, because if we put solar panels on, we have just equipped one house, which is which really was a bit of an experiment, but we've equipped one house with what I would call the full Monty with regards to climate control. It has a heat pump, it's isolation, and if you speak to Simon Price, I'm sure he'll speak to you about the specification. Now, it's going to be very difficult for us to meet that specification on all the houses that we currently have in our portfolio, 2,700. But we should strive to do it. There's no question about that. But I do think, and I think most people in the chamber and most people would agree, the most important thing is to deliver homes to people who have nowhere to live. And unfortunately, climate control is climate emergency is very important. But I'm more about housing people in decent standard homes.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Anyone else? Okay, one more from me, John, and then I think we can move on. The self-build item, I know this has been a program that's been around for many, many years. Can you tell us what the success has been? Because I know this has been appearing every so often, but I can't remember actually any statistics on the last time what good news we had on the self-build project scheme.
Well, Guy, it's not a great success. The problem is finding the correct partner, and it's very complicated finding the correct people to do it. We do have a program running at the moment. We've identified somewhere where we're going to build the homes, and it's moving forward, but it's not moving forward anywhere near as fast as I would like it to. The big problem, I guess, in the borough is houses are the cost of land is so expensive. So the only way we can make it work is to use land of our own. And then then we have to decide how we do that. It's council owned land, maybe 100-year lease. Maybe that's what we would probably do. But no, you're right, Guy. It's not something that, there's very few councils that have covered themselves in glory over this. I mean, it's actually getting everybody together. People drop out, people come back in again. It's been complicated, and I would say that the last 18 months hasn't helped that one a little bit.
Well, there's definitely a gap in the market there for someone who is very much more entrepreneurial inclined to fill in that gap in the market, to build these things and support them. But anyway, Clive, you've indicated you have a question.
Yeah, thank you, Guy. John, you said that consultation for the local plan is going to start again in July, and hopefully it will be completed by December. So that is good news if that actually happens. I would expect it maybe to drop back by a month or two. If it did drop back until, say, March of 2022, would we still have a 5-year land supply that will protect us from some of these speculative developers who seem to plague us?
It's a difficult question to answer, Clive. It's not really my portfolio, but my view is that COVID has brought some realism to, and the fact that we're pretty good now at defending. I don't think we've lost a major. I know it's not rocket science, but we use the best barrister available in the land. He doesn't like to lose. So we have a situation whereby we win most of the appeals. And I think people do forget we do still have a 5-year plan. We'd still have a local plan, albeit it is getting older. But that plan in it does include numbers, and those numbers, as I believe, those numbers will very much stand us in good stead if we're challenged. It will be very hard, it will be very difficult for any inspector to take us to task at the moment, bearing in mind what's been happening in the last, as I said, I know it's a great excuse, COVID, but it is true. They haven't been able to build homes. They haven't been able to get stuff to build those homes. And their people have been a bit uncertain about buying homes. And we see some of the most successful developments, such as the one at Arborfield, where they sell like hotcakes. They're 15% higher than everything else in the borough. And even that has slowed right down. So Clive, I would suggest that you need to put that question to Wayne Smith probably in a month's time, once he's had all the different bits of land submitted to him for the consultation.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Okay, thank you, John. I think we might have covered. Oh, wait, sorry, Paul.
Thank you, Guy. It's for you, John. Page 23, the housing 145. Does WBC have a plan of where the 1,000 homes are to go over the 4-year period?
I have a list. I actually have a list of 1,352 homes that we've got in the programme. And so, yes, is the answer to that question.
Thank you. Okay, John, I think we might have covered initially your bit now from the homes bit. We'll probably pick up when we're talking about Treasury and other bits as we go forward. But keen to let someone else have a chat first. So let's go to Parry next, and let's see what we can hear from his parts of the portfolio. We're very much jumping around here at the moment because all of the items are scattered throughout, but I think it'd be good to hear about the leisure strategy and how COVID has affected that and how we can move forward on that. That's where my thinking is right now. So Parry, do you want to have a chat?
Thank you, Chair. The leisure side of things, as you know, let me just turn to that. We are going through a consultation period for the revised leisure strategy, which we're going to put in place. So that is very much going forward. And the Carnival Hub, which we have often talked about, that's nicely taking shape now, which is about £22 million project, which will house the leisure centre and the library, and that will replace the old Carnival pool. So that's virtually on target for completion next year. Cantley Park redevelopment, or it's taking shape now as well, where we within the borough we have plenty of football facilities, but very little in the way of cricket, and there's a lot of demand where we are often asked to provide facilities for cricket, and there will be a cricket pitch there. There'll also be a 3G pitch there, and we're also going to develop the playground there as well. There's also another possibility in Arborfield, where we are consulting with Crest Nicholson to turn their facilities there in Arborfield Green. So there will be a very nicely prepared cricket pitch there, which will be approved by the England Cricket Board, and it will be to the English Cricket Board standards as well. So that's in the offing now, and hopefully by the start of the cricket season next year, Arborfield should be ready as well. In terms of the 3G pitches, there's one at Arborfield and as well. So to be completed are the main facilities will be the Carnival Hub and the Cantley Park development, and also the Arborfield one, hopefully at the beginning of the cricket season next year. But the Cantley Park should be ready in the summer of this year. That's about it really on the sports, on the leisure side.
Thank you, Perry. Do members have any questions to Perry? Clive?
Yeah, hello, Perry. The Rice Green Hub is probably the only hub in the borough that doesn't have a pool. Have you thought of putting a swimming pool in there? I know we've got lots of development going on, Rice Green and Shinfield. Wouldn't it be nice to have a pool there as well?
Well, thank you for that. Thank you very much. Thank you, Clive, for the question. I think that Rice Green facility was developed some time ago, and you're right, there isn't a swimming pool there at the moment. And that's something that if the community really wanted it, and if there was demand there, we would certainly consider it.
We're going to build one at Arborfield first, Clive. That was promised 4 years ago.
Anything else there, Clive? Shirley?
Thank you, Guy. A quick question. On page 25, it mentions revised leisure strategy. Consultation is taking place May, June 21, which actually was the first I even knew that those consultations were taking place was when I read the agenda. And I had a look online, and sure enough, there is consultation there. And I wondered how well that's been advertised, because I haven't seen that mentioned on any of the local Facebook groups where these things do normally pop up locally, and you see people saying, and first, as I say, first I'd seen of it was in the agenda.
Well, Shirley, I think the leisure strategy has been well advertised throughout the local newspapers, on our own website. There is plenty there. And we want to hear from our residents and the borough as to what they would expect to see from our leisure strategy. We can certainly carry on strategizing ourselves, but the whole idea is to listen to the residents to see what they want to see from the leisure strategy. But it is very well advertised, but I haven't, I must admit, don't really, which Facebook page you want it to be on. That's really up to up to your good selves, but there's certainly plenty there on the Woking Borough website itself.
Could I just ask, Parry, was it advertised in the Borough News that went out to all households? I don't recollect seeing it there either.
No, I don't remember seeing it there either. But certainly we can put it into the Borough News, the next one coming up soon.
Okay, maybe we should ask CEM if they could put a bit of a push on it, because I think it's really important. It's a strategy for the next 4 years, and I think it's really important that as many people take part as possible. So maybe another push to get people to know about it would be in order. Well,
I certainly signed off another press release a couple of weeks ago, and that certainly talked about the leisure strategy going out to the press. So, but we can certainly give it another push. There's no problem with that.
Thank you. Quick one from me, Parry. Regarding the our current leisure provider, which is, I believe, Places for People, if my memory is correct.
Right.
How have they dealt so far with the recovery from COVID now that the lockdown is releasing? Because I know that everyone was struggling basically before lockdown and before third lockdown, as it or whatever it was. So how are they reacting, and are they being cooperative with us, or are they being potentially somewhat challenging? Because I've heard experiences of all flavours of the spectrum across the whole lot.
Well, Guy, I think, as you can very well appreciate, the COVID pandemic put a number of challenges and thrown at us, and we had to close the leisure centres, as you well know. And of course, the contractor, which you mentioned, is quite correct, Places of Pleasure, the people for Places of People, were struggling because they were losing money. The income wasn't there, so we had to complement their takings, not their profits that they would have made, but certainly the loss of income. The council was charged for reducing funding for the loss of income. But as soon as the leisure centres were reopened, they have cooperated very, very well. Their expectations and our expectations were the same. But yeah, they were very, very cooperative indeed in trying to get the leisure centres open and up and running again.
Thank you, Parry. Alison.
Good evening, Parry. May I ask about the plans for a new crematorium? Well, sorry, we don't have a crematorium, so to have a crematorium in our borough. And if you could put some timings, are we hoping? When are we hoping to be able to submit the planning application for that?
Thank you. Good evening, Alex. If you want to switch my the plans for a crematorium of our own are being discussed, and a site has been looked at, which I can't really disclose at the moment because there were a couple of sites that we looked at we haven't finalised yet. But certainly, once that we've kind of cleanly come out of COVID, we will be putting a planning application in later on this year.
Thank you.
Anyone else on this one? Okay. What we'll do, Parry, is we'll move now on to Pauline's area, which I'm looking over at Councillor Fishwick in anticipation. And what we'll do is, if you can hang around, I suspect there'll be a quick fire round towards the end where there's areas that are falling in between everyone's portfolios here, which will probably require all three of you to answer a specific question. So Pauline, do you want to give us a quick chat?
Yeah, thank you, Guy. So the highways direction for next year is sort of three-pronged. The first one is continuation of the major roads development. So we've got the Southern Distributor Road, the Northern Distributor Road, and the 9 Mile Ride extension. So those are pretty big roads programs. We're also doing quite a lot on drainage. Firstly, as a result of the pilot on smart drainage, we're actually going to increase the amount of drain centres across the borough. That's got two benefits. It actually costs less in terms of maintenance because we only maintain the drains we need to, and it also gives us a good early warning of potential flooding problems. And we're also going to look at a flood mitigation scheme for the Loddon. Then the third prong is about active travel and cycling and walking. So we've got two things on the go at the moment. We've got the LC WIP consultation, which is the local walking and cycling implementation plan, which has had more than 3,000 comments from the public. We need to go and digest those and try and prioritise what we're doing in that area. And we've also got some bids on active travel, which include some potential cycleways in the borough, which should come out earlier. We've also got a couple of strategies. We've got a low carbon transport strategy, which incorporates an EV charging strategy to try and understand what we can do to reduce emissions through that. And we're looking at a bus service improvement plan as well. And we've also got a significant amount of money increasing, as I said at the budget meeting, doubling again for structural maintenance, which is quite difficult to say, for the roads, and also emergency maintenance, plus the planned resurfacing. And finally, we've got some activities in parking. We've had a Twyford parking management pilot, and we will also do a borough-wide parking management plan. The reason those things are not as fast as we originally planned was COVID meant that we couldn't measure the parking because it was all not normal because everybody was at home. So that's something that once we think the traffic has returned to more like normal in about September, we'll start looking at the traffic management pilot. And in addition, we've got 3 new park and rides that we're developing at the moment. So that's it for highways, really, I think. That helps.
Thank you. Clive.
Thank you, Pauline. You mentioned a bus service improvement plan. Can you give us an idea what measures this might include?
Well, this is a new government announcement about bus partnerships. So we need to get into a partnership. We can get into a partnership with our local bus companies to actually improve our joint working, and I'm very keen on that. I think there are things we can do to improve the bus services that we get, and also to make sure that the bus services are prioritised in a way that benefits our residents. So that's what that's about. It's at very, very early stage. It's to set up an enhanced partnership with the bus companies.
Do you see this as being an opportunity for Wokingham to take a share of Reading Borough Council's bus company?
That's a really nice idea, Clive. At the moment, we're not allowed to own bus companies, but that may change. It was only councils that had existing bus companies in 1984 when the bus company ownership was changed that were allowed to retain them. The rest of the councils are not allowed to, which is why there's only.
Does that actually stop us investing, sort of taking a third share or something like that?
I believe so. I heard.
Okay.
I would certainly be interested in doing something to increase our influence over Reading buses if we have the opportunity.
Thanks. I've got another question. You said that we're interested in the Loddon flood alleviation scheme.
Yeah.
Do you have any recent update? We've been updated several times as a corporate and community overview and scrutiny committee. But do you have a very recent one for us?
Well, you know all the work that went on around Egremont. to try and alleviate the problems caused by the culvert. I believe that work's now finished. We're monitoring using the some of the flood monitoring things that I talked about earlier, the flow of water through those culverts, and we will do something if we need to across the rest of the Loddon Valley. So it's a matter of using the monitoring to actually understand where the risk is and doing something about it.
Yeah, I don't think that the real issue is around the culverts that feed into that end of the Loddon near a showcase roundabout. It is perhaps water that comes a little bit from further downstream that we've got to be dealing with, or is it upstream?
Up.
Yeah.
You tell me, Clive, I don't know.
All right, it's upstream.
But I would say that just point out the Loddon is the fastest flowing tributary of the Thames, so it does have a heck of a lot of water goes down it.
Yeah, I think this will be interesting on this one, because with the flooding schemes and everything like that, I presume that our dear friend Francesca Hobson is going to be involved in assisting with that as well, who has some very, very useful insights on that. And I believe there's also some work being done at Reading University, based on some conversations from the previous meeting. I could look at the minutes and find it if needed.
So this crosses between me and Parry, Guy. So
yes,
on road flooding is my brief. Off-road flooding is Parry's brief.
as I said, I knew we were going to go through a bunch of stuff. Clive, do you have anything else, or shall I move on to someone else, as I've got a lot of hands marking? Okay, Alison next, then we'll go to Paul, and then Phil.
Good evening, Pauline. Pauline, I wanted to ask about the park and rides.
Mm-hmm.
So is the order that they're set out in, TVP, Winners Triangle, Copy Beach, is that the order that they will be opening in, or have you got a time frame you can give us on when these are going to be fully up and running?
No, I haven't got time. Your microphone's still on. I haven't got a time frame because Thames Valley Park and Ride was knocked sideways by COVID because all the offices were essentially shut. So the demand for that decreased, although we did use it during Ramadan. Winners Triangle, I have got a date for starting construction somewhere here, but I can't find it. Hold on a second. Yeah, the Winners Triangle and Copped Beach are due to finish. That can't be right. Sorry, I need to get you some dates on Winners Triangle and Copped Beach. I've got March 21 here, and that doesn't make any sense at all. So Copped Beach has just started work, I know that, and Winners Triangle, I think, is starting at the moment. We've had to put aside, I think, a few spaces for continued usage. So the work has started. I don't have an end date for those at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Could I have a second question? Is that okay, Go? I'm delighted to see the bus service improvement plan. I'm currently chairing our OS Management's Climate Emergency Task and Finish group, where we've got recommendations about improving bus use. Do you have any policy direction about trying to get more Woking Borough residents onto the train?
Yeah. I certainly think we could make better use of the train services. I mean, we've got the Winners Triangle Park and Ride, which is right next door to a train station. There's certainly some opportunities, and I wouldn't preclude trying to encourage people onto trains. I'm not sure whether buses are going to pick up in the same way as they did before COVID. It'll be interesting to see how the public reacts to buses in the future. So I think we need to look at all opportunities, not just buses.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think we need to enable more people to be able to use the early station, which obviously is really early stroke Woodley station, because you can get on the train and be in Reading or in Woking in about 5 minutes compared to, and we don't want people on the road, do we? So yeah, I hope we can see something working towards that. Thank you.
So I think the problem, Alison, with Early Station particularly is the car park is far too small. And I've been talking to highways, and indeed when I was on the town council, I was talking to the town council about what opportunities we have to increase the amount of parking available for Early for people who can't get there easily. I mean, the other thing is that I think increasingly with the cycleways and the routes of the cycleways, it is going to be more possible to cycle to stations. We should be looking for better cycle parking as well.
Or improve the bus routes to stations.
We don't have any control on the bus routes.
Yeah.
Unless we pay.
Thank you. Paul.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Pauline, for that final answer, because it was quite encouraging actually that you were looking at more sustainable travel to stations rather than driving there by car. And I think walking and cycling is going to be the way forward, particularly for local journeys. On page 20, the second one from the bottom, it's got preparation of low carbon transport strategy. Now, when I took that motion through this chamber back in September 2019, it was a low emissions transport strategy. I don't know why the word carbon has gone in there, because emissions is not just NOx, it's also PM 2.5 and PM 10s. So I think that's actually wrong, rather than with the word carbon in there, because it's not just really going into the climate emergency action plan, it's also dealing with air quality. A comment on the bus service improvement plan, which is bus back better. That's where that comes from for the government initiative. And will there be a partnership between Reading Borough Council, Wokingham Borough Council and Bracknell Forest, which is where most of the Reading bus services run? Do you want to come back to me on those two first?
The first question, or the first comment, I think it was absolutely right. I don't know why it's changed its name. It's not intentional. The thing about buses, the enhanced partnership, I mean, we previously have suggested we have more active involvement in Reading buses and have not had much success, but we will keep going and see what we can do through this enhanced partnership. I think, you know, the enhanced partnership could be seen as a benefit on both sides. I mean, a partnership suggests more influence for us and more what's the word, more protection for the bus company. So if we work the partnership right, we'll both get something out of it. And I would certainly be very happy and very pleased to get more influence over Reading buses. I mean, one of the first things I did when the new managing director of Reading buses started was actually invited him in for a chat about how we could cooperate better. And I would like to cooperate better with them, but that's a two-way street.
Could have another question. Again, on page 20, the active travel improvements, part of the successful active travel funding bid, Wokingham, Early and Woodley, they're three separate schemes of which you can only afford to do potentially one of them. You might not be able to do the whole of one of them, is the other thing. But two of those will end up going into the LC WHIP, like waiting list, let's say. Do you know when that's actually going to be completed and chosen which particular scheme is going to go forward? Because the funding for that runs out in March 2022, which is not that long away.
Yeah, it's imminent, Paul. We've asked for the three options to be evaluated, and we've got the consultation from the public, and we will make a decision imminently. The other thing is, just because we haven't got the money to do all three at the moment, and I think we were quite clear when we put the consultation out that we didn't, doesn't mean we won't be after getting more funding to be able to move all of them forward, because I think they're all pretty good ideas. It's a matter of doing the one that is the best idea first.
Okay, right. Phil.
Hi, Pauline. Hi, I wanted to ask about safer routes to school, particularly safer walking routes to school. A lot of our new estates are built across what can be very busy roads, especially in the morning, from existing schools. And we obviously want to encourage young families to walk to school and students to walk to school rather than jump in the car. So is there something within this plan for specifically that type of project, or is that something that we need to talk with you separately about adding onto the transport strategy?
So I think the new estates.
Microphone.
He has already, I think. The new estates should be designed. Can you hear me? The new estates.
You're good.
The new estate should be designed with safer routes to school and physically separated paths and crossings and all sorts of things as part of the cost of the estate, and the developers should put those in. For the changes to older estates or where there are things missing, that's where the LC WIP comes in, which is the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, and that will enable us to enhance things and fill in missing links where we need to.
Yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Clive, and then I want to ask some questions.
Thank you, Guy. Pauline, you mentioned that you'd like to see some more spaces for cycles at some of the train stations. How about motorcycles? How about some parking spaces specifically for motorcycles? And I'm thinking of, you look a little puzzled. There is one station in the borough that doesn't have any motorcycle spaces, and that's Early.
Yeah, I think the problem with Early, Clive, is it doesn't have enough space for anything. It's got very, very few parking spaces. And if you take parking spaces away for motorcycle parking, you will end up with no parking spaces at all. I think we need to do something to improve the parking in Early Station. But if you've got any ideas, I'd be very happy to hear them, because I've been booting at ideas around the place. One of the suggestions I had was using the car park at the corner of the Solihull Park, which is actually locked most of the time. The town council own it. It's a bit of a walk from the station, but it's not that far. It could be a good opportunity for the town council to make some income and to help the parking problem at Early Station, because at the moment, most of the time that car park's locked. So that's one suggestion. I'm always interested in any suggestions you've got.
You mentioned earlier that you were speaking to Early Town Council about more car parking at Early Station. I just wondered who you spoke to Early Town Council.
I didn't say that. I said when I was on Early Town Council, I was speaking about extra parking it was on the corner of Solihull, and at that point, the view we got was that it couldn't be done. What I'm saying is, as leader of Early Town Council, might like to think about that again.
I will. And I assume it was officers who said it couldn't be done, or was it borough officers?
No, it was town officers.
Town council, okay. How about looking over the other side of the railway on the Woodley side to see if there is any car parking space over there?
There is some land over there, and there are some spaces along one of the residential roads that you could potentially use. I've looked at that as well and thought about that. I do think we need to do something about it. But I do think we've also got to be really careful. I mean, if you put parking spaces down the side of somebody's residential road for station parking, they're not likely to be very pleased about it. So I'd be interested in your views, and I wouldn't mind a conversation about it, actually.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. So question from the chair, basically around the EV parking strategy. Now, one area that I've seen, and Rose Street and Wokingham springs to mind as an example, is in regards to what what consideration has been given to those basically residents that park on the street and big blocks of terrace houses like we see in many parts of the country, but Rose Street is the one example I can think of off the top of my head in the borough. What consideration has been done there? Because I can see a problem where we're going to have increased amounts of electrical vehicles arriving in the borough in the next 5 to 10 years. And I'm concerned that we're basically going to get a problem where the only parking places for streets is basically on the pavements themselves, on the streets themselves, not the pavement, and which means logically the only place to put an EV charging point is on the pavement. So how are we going to consider that, considering some of our pavements are already quite narrow? Because the last thing we can have is effectively people running out a cable from their kitchen window across the pavement to plug into their car, because I have seen that in a street in Portsmouth and it was not a pleasant sight to see, because not only is that a major tripping hazard, I believe it also might rate as a fire hazard. So what consideration has been done of that? Because I know this is a problem that is going to rear its ugly head.
So what a lot of streets in London do is run the power for the for EV charging from the streetlights. Unfortunately, when we put the LED streetlights in as a safety measure, we moved all the LED streetlights to the interior of the pavement rather than the exterior, which means we can't use that as an opportunity. There are some companies that do curbside charging, but that again becomes more difficult with the current street power being on the wrong side of the pavement. As you said, you can't run a cable across the street. So this strategy, which should be out for consultation around about October, is looking at the options around that. Some people make small bollards that are about, I don't know, 2 foot high that you can then use for charging, which are separate from the street lamps, but it's all quite complicated and pretty tricky and expensive.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that it's at least high on the awareness, because the last thing we want to see is cables everywhere in the next few months. Okay, that's the one from me for the time being on highways. Does anyone else have anything? Shirley.
Thank you, Guy. Thank you, Pauline. Yeah, a quick question about park and ride schemes. My conversations that I've had with traffic management various times indicate that Woking Borough is not awfully struck on park and ride schemes. The ones that we have are round stations and in certain areas where, you know, obviously the residents get a lot of people parking in their roads. Reason I'm asking about this is that my ward, as you know, bounds right against Reading Borough. Reading Borough have expanded considerably their parking permit schemes, and as a consequence, I'm now getting an awful lot of people coming under the bridge and parking in my ward, which is upsetting my residents. And, you know, there are 1 or 2 roads certainly that I would identify as being, one side of that road would be a really good candidate for a park and ride scheme to protect our residents from these people coming under the bridge and parking. So I just wondered if you knew why there was a reluctance in Woking Borough to go down the route of park and ride schemes.
Shirley, just a clarification. You were saying park and ride scheme. You mean parking permit, don't you?
I mean parking permit scheme. Sorry. Yes, absolutely. Sorry, Pauline. It's confusion.
I did wonder, because we've just put a park and ride not very far from your ward. In fact, it's probably in your ward. So the issue with parking permits is residents are all very keen on them until they've got to pay for them. So we could put parking permit schemes in, but you do have to pay for it. And people generally don't, when you consult, don't want to have a parking permit scheme that they have to pay for. And it's just a fact of life, unfortunately. So I'm very happy to consult on any of them if you've got particular roads where you think people would like it. The second issue is that wherever you put parking permit scheme, as you've seen with Reading, all that happens is you move the problem somewhere else. So they sort of creep. I honestly, when it's not that we're not keen on parking permits, it's generally that the residents don't want them when they know they've got to pay for them.
Okay, I'll go back to my residents and talk about that some more and see what I can find out. Thank you.
Okay.
Is anything like the previous consultation on something like that? I did. We ended up with a third didn't care, a third in favour, and a third vehemently against.
Exactly.
So yeah. Good luck, Shirley. I think it's the answer to that one in regards to talking to residents to get favourability. Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Guy. Just on the EV, cables across the highway is actually illegal under the Highways Act. Yes, some places have tried various sorts of things, little cable covers and all sorts of things, but they end up as trip hazards, and there's maintenance issues.
Paul, I don't understand. I was never suggesting cables across the highway.
No. It's what Guy was mentioning. I know you didn't recommend it anyway, Pauline. I know you didn't, but I'm just saying it is actually illegal anyway. And the other thing to bear in mind as well with EV charging points is street clutter. Places like Rose Street, a conservation area, the last thing you want to see is charging points all over the place, because it will make the place look really, really awful. And there will be alternatives for charging facilities for the future. So more of a comment.
I think Paul just volunteered to submit a very extensive thing to the consultation when it comes out in December. We will remind him of that when the time comes. So consider yourself stitched up.
I wrote a EV strategy in one of my last years at in my profession a few years ago.
Consider yourself doubly stitched up, but it would be, if you've got a copy of that, I think it would be very interesting to see it, especially thinking behind it, because professional opinion on these things, especially from the walks of life that we all lead, is going to be very interesting. I see Alison indicating, so over to you.
Yeah, it's sort of following up from what Shirley was talking about. That I see you're going to consult on the draft borough-wide parking management plan. Is the borough-wide parking management plan going to come to ONS before it goes out to consultation?
Happy to involve ONS in that. Absolutely fine. I think one of the issues, the thing that's, as I said, just to reiterate, the thing that's delaying the borough-wide parking management plan is that we can't really do anything with it until we've actually got back to normal in terms of where people park and where people work. I mean, there were a whole series of legacy problems that I know about in various different places that I've had emails about over the years. But at the moment, it's not like that. It's different. And we have to get the traffic back to normal, or at least back to the new normal, which may not be the same as the old normal, before we get feedback. Otherwise, we might do things that are actually fine to begin with, but then when traffic returns to normal, are no longer appropriate. But yeah,
Okay.
It's a long answer to your question, but yes.
So to be clear, Pauline, do we have a draft parking management plan now? Because the entry on page 21 just refers to the consultation as if it already exists. I mean, is that the case?
It's being refreshed, Alison, because of COVID. So I don't think, and I think officers don't think, that the parking and transport will return to where it was pre-COVID. So we had something pre-COVID in draft, but I mean, I know from my work, before COVID, everybody drove in. Now we're talking about flexible working and, people working a couple of days a week and all sorts of different things that will change the shape of traffic going forward and will therefore change the shape of parking. I mean, Twyford's a very good example. A lot of the residential streets that were previously full of people getting the train are now full of people working from home. So that the mix and who's parking where is completely different. And I'm not sure it's going to come back to where it was before.
I think it might be interesting, before I go to Paul, to see it as work is done on that program, because I know we got item 10, which is reviewing highways transport issues, including contracts, blah, blah, blah. But it'd be interesting to see that parking plan once a revision's been done in maybe 6 months' time, So that way we can see what officers are thinking, how we are all experiencing return to normal in terms of work, just so that we can get a view. And maybe there's then further ideas that this committee can put into that process before it goes out to consultation.
That would be fine. That would be useful. So the consultation is due in April 22.
22, did you say?
Yeah.
So it might be worthwhile then for us to put that in for December. April 22 was when the consultation was due. So if we can get visibility of it and a review in December, that then gives officers a couple of months to, if there's any changes and suggestions, before it hits out to consultation.
Yeah, I'd be happy with that.
Okay.
Right. I can't commit to the date on behalf of the officers, but it sounds reasonable.
No, I just think it, because in December, I think December, looking at as a topic for December, if it's due in April.
December next year.
This year, we're in 2021, and Pauline said it was due out for consultation in April 2022. If we see the draft and can make comments to improve it, we then look at it in December. That gives officers then 3 months, excluding December, to review and improve, and then we can go forward.
Knowing the sort of timescales of these things, it might be December, it might be January.
Yeah. Either way, we've got the opportunity to look at it in that one. So that gives us this topic to look at on top of our regular budget review. So yeah, Paul, you were indicating before I shanghaied that.
Thank you, Guy. You actually read my mind, because Pauline mentioned about doing the review from September when things get more normal. It will probably never go back to what it used to be like. And therefore, I was going to suggest the autumn period for reviewing and revising everything, and something coming back to us in probably January, ready to then go out at the required time, March, April. So that fitted in perfectly what I was going to say.
Well, great minds think alike there. So yeah, we'll look at that for December, January then, depending on how officers and things change. So yeah, everyone feed in their work experiences, which is, everyone's a bit different now. Does anyone else have any questions on this for highways? If not, I'm going to ask a question of all three executive members. I'm not seeing anything. Right. Okay. So everyone, Parry, John, pay attention here, and this might also be Pauline as well. The question I'm asking, and to steer us topic towards, is basically around the economic development and business recovery plan and the COVID recovery plan. Just keen to understand strategy and thinking, and how has there been any changes since we were last talking about this a few months ago? General observation on this one.
General observation. We understand how important it is, and we've split the regeneration portfolio into two. One is the asset management and the money side of it, which I intend to take on board. And the other one is the regeneration of the businesses and activities in the town centre. And that's been taken on by Monroe in his role as responsible for commercial and development in the borough. And so it's an area that we've changed. Believe it or not, the town centre is moving to a point where it's becoming fairly mature is not the right word, because it's been held up during the pandemic. But an awful lot, I think it's nearly 90%, I think now, of all the properties that have been built, the commercial properties that have been built, have some form of lease or on the basis of exchanging contracts. The houses that we built, they're selling for substantially more money than we thought they would sell, and some 85% of the homes that have actually been released are either waiting to exchange contracts or are under offer. So it's quite mature, it's moving forward. We've come out of that very early phase where everything needed, and now what we need to do is to repair the damage done by COVID, and I think Stuart's well placed to do that.
Thank you for that, John. I think we need to ask Stuart to potentially come to the next meeting then, so we can just get a quick update from that in that regard, because I know we got the standing item of executive member items, but I think this is something that is we need to see in action, basically keep an overview on, because it's such an important thing, because every business is slightly different, and we need to know and understand that the process is flexible in this regard. Does anyone have any questions on Anne?
I was just going to ask, you mentioned Wokingham Town Centre just then. Will Stuart also cover the other town centres?
Well, Anne, I can answer that. I mean, say interest rates remain low, so we will be looking to invest much as we've done in Woodley. We're starting to look at the opportunities within the other town centres, but like everything, we would have been a lot further forward on that if it hadn't been for COVID. But before we start digging up somebody else's garden, we need to make sure that our own garden's properly prepared and growing properly, because we need to get one done first. As I say, we're probably 6 months or 7 months behind where we'd like to have been. And our first acquisition within Woodley, really, we're hoping we'll kick the ball off, but we haven't actually got to that point where we're ready to make the next move. But the answer to your question is, I'm hoping that the money generated by the town centre, the Wokingham Town Centre, will allow us to invest that money in other town centres around the borough.
Thanks.
Phil?
I wanted to ask a question actually which probably encompasses both John and Parry. Something that I've seen and actually made use of in Farnborough, which isn't far away, in shops which are empty and waiting for to be taken up, there's ping pong parlour. And so that's in conjunction with Table Tennis England. Is that something that perhaps we could consider? Because it's a passerby interest, it makes the shop look used, or the area look used, and obviously it develops an interest in a sport.
I think that's a great idea, and if I was in a situation, Phil, where I had vacant possession, if you like, and no hope of ever renting anything, I would it'd be something I'd be looking at. Also, maybe pop up art shops, that type of thing. But we're not in that position. I mean, I can't understand it, and we're told by our commercial advisors that we're bucking the trend. We're just we got people, they're not actually fighting over the lease, but we have lots of people now which just want to be in Wokingham.
Thank you for that, John. Anyone else got any questions on the recovery, or we're gonna have one thing is everyone. Oh, Sam.
Hello. Hi, do you know what our position is as a borough and how exposed we are with regards to vacant commercial properties, for example, things like empty office buildings, or is it not a big problem in the borough? Because I know looking at the problem in London, there's been a big increase in vacant offices in the city, which are now having to be, well, they're looking at converting those to residential buildings as housing.
In the centre of Wokingham, Sam, we've seen quite a lot of that activity. Some of it good. Wokingham Town, let me just stress, I'm talking about Wokingham Town. Some of it's been pretty good. Some of it's been not so good. I think that everybody's going to have a problem with regards to office space. We are lucky as a council, and more luck than judgment, that we're in the retail sector. We've got very little, if anything, in office space. But I'm sure that you're going to see especially as a lot of these offices are owned by investment companies. They may be pension funds, people like M&G, those sorts of people. I can see what's going to come out of this is probably a commercial rental sector, not a commercial, but a residential rental sector, which we've never really had in this country before. It's been sort of piecemeal, unlike in the rest of Europe, places like Germany. It's not typical people run out and buy their homes, and I think that they've got to do something with these buildings. And of course, Sam, it's not the buildings that's worth money, is it? It's the land. So if the building doesn't work, what do you do with it? You pull it down and you build something else. So I think there will be a hiatus, but I don't see it as a problem for us. I mean, one of our biggest problems, believe it or not, was when the army moved out of Arborfield. I mean, we used to get nearly £500,000 worth of council tax from, or rates, at the business rates from them. But slowly but surely, they've been replaced by commercial, by residential council tax. So yeah, I don't. We haven't got the problem like they've got in London, Sam.
Thanks, John.
I've got one final question, John, because I know this is an area that is interesting, because I just happened to look at it on the page. Homeless accommodation process. I know you are very happy with how the borough was able to respond on the homelessness problem back when the pandemic started. Do you have anything to update and tell this committee on how we can help, on how we are mitigating homelessness going forward on this?
I think part of the problem is at this moment in time, things are quite good because the government have committed a reasonable sum of money, which allows us to do some of these things. Going forward, it's going to be a bit more challenging, but I'm hoping that we can generate more money in the revenue account, which will allow us to pay for those things. Now, one of those areas, it's an area which the HRA can help in. Although it's a ring-fence fund, homelessness, providing temporary accommodation is something that's considered in the HRA. So we're lucky that we've got this pot, if you like, where it's all ring-fence. We can't use it for anything else, but we can use it for put together some homeless accommodation that we can then rent. In some cases, some people can't afford rent, but everybody gets you know, if you're signed up, you get your rent benefits. So it is something that we're hoping will continue. I would be very disappointed if we lose the impetus that we've actually, with the work we put in to get the people off the street. But it's a very complex matter, homelessness, because the people a lot of the people, and I'm not talking about families and who have come on hard times and have lost their house because they can't afford paying the mortgage or the rent. I'm really talking about people that have become homeless due to other aspects of their life. They may have problems, mental health problems, disabilities, and you know, and learning difficulties, and I think that's the challenge, because you can't just take these people and drop them into the middle of an established community, because they cause havoc. So we need to build specialists. But I would hope everybody in the chamber will support me in trying to keep these very unfortunate people off the street.
Thank you for that. I think you have the committee's support in that regard. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions on any items they have read in the pack this evening? Because I've got one item, but that's maybe something going forward in regards to a request to actually move a item from our plan onto the next agenda.
Mr. Chairman, can I just
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, can I just make a comment before? I gave a fairly glib answer to Paul Fishwick with regards to how many homes we planning to build. I have got some statistics, Paul. We've actually built 125. We've got 139 houses on site at the moment, and we have 890 homes that we're currently in the process of progressing at different stages. You know, moving towards planning, looking at land and all that sort of thing. So we although we've been pushed out by about 6 months, we are on target to deliver those 1,000 homes. Thank you.
Just got a thumbs up from Paul there. As I'm aware, the camera keeps focusing in on me. Okay, I feel, unless members have got any specific items they want to discuss from the agenda pack, we're going to be moving on effectively to looking at where we're going to try and slot things in. So I refer to members back to page 14 on the pack in terms of how we are going to be building the committee meetings to going forward. Now, we've basically
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
Do you need us any longer?
I don't think we do. I think it's very much a case of the only benefit you would have to staying right now would be knowing when you're going to get surprised by a request for an item in the next few weeks. But John, as you are finances, you know that your intense scrutinization begins basically on October the 6th, when we start looking at the medium-term financial plan.
Okay, well, thank you, bye.
Okay, right. Well, anyway, thanks very much. Yes, Pauline?
Can we all go?
Yeah, I think you guys can go. Just prepare to be surprised when we ask for things. But anyway, thank you, Pauline. Thank you, Barry. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Okay, and I can ignore that now. Right, opening it to the floor initially. Who wants to put what where? Is there any topics that from this evening you feel would be of interest for us to discuss going forward? I mean, the one I actually highlighted, even though we didn't discuss it tonight, was actually the library provision, because I think it'd be interesting to see how COVID has affected it and some of the ideas on how we can change libraries going forward. Simply because I've seen, this was my mother-in-law over in the United States, but what they were doing during lockdown is they were actually letting various arts and crafts manufacturers basically hold online classes in the physical library, so they had a bit of space, and using library assets so that they could actually broadcast things a lot easier. Things like that. Alison.
Yeah, I think looking at the library provision would be very interesting to explore, as you say, what they've learned. But so many more residents have discovered borrowing online, borrowing the e-collections, using a form of click and collect, and whether we're going to move forward with lots of those services that have perhaps made the libraries far more accessible. Because as we're all aware, the opening. Am I too close to the microphone?
No, you're fine. Oh. It's probably just backfeeding me as well. Libraries
are often only open during the daytime, so people at work can't go to them. So expanding the ability to make the most of using our library services without having to go there in the daytime is, I hope we're going to see that going forward.
Thank you. Clive?
Thank you, Guy. Could we look at number 12, which is reviewing high-speed broadband? Because if we're having more and more people working at home, then I think it's quite important that we have decent broadband for everybody. I'd also like to look at sports and leisure facilities, because we have at the moment a review of that. So I'd like to see the outcome of that in 4 or 5 months.
I completely agree on that one. Chair? Yes, Callum.
With the sports and the number 6, reviewing sports and leisure facilities, it might be worth, as Parry's obviously been talking about tonight, looking at amalgamating that with the leisure strategy review, perhaps, and taking that as one, because that will tie it up nicely. So if I go away and I speak to Parry and I'll speak to the officers and sort of see when we can tie those two up later in the year.
Yep, I'm happy with that.
The other one that I particularly wanted to look at was number 3, which is
Flood risk management responsibilities.
yeah, because Pauline's not here now, but I don't think she sounded as if she was very much on top of it.
Well, she did say that there's a mixture because it's,
it's
road traffic and the other bit's Parry. So yeah,
split between two of them. But I think what we need to be doing is making sure that there's some floodplain utilised on the south side of the M4, which is going to stop the Showcase Cinema being flooded every couple of years, and that will make a huge difference to lots and lots of people living around there.
yeah, I think effectively part of me thinks we can. Okay, this is the crazy idea. Why don't we dig there's some land over there that is open. Why don't we dig a bunch of ruddy fishing lakes? Because that would definitely hold the water. You can tell I'm an angler. Yeah, I think that's. When do we usually get? Because we get flood in every so often. When did we last have them in?
So flooding is something that the committee looks at every year because it has a responsibility under the Flood and Water Management Act. I think the committee considered a review. It wasn't that long ago at all. Yeah, so
I'm not so sure it was that long ago, actually.
I think it was sooner than that. So I suggest that whenever we had it that year, I suggest that we
it was February.
February, so
it was February. I've just looked at the minutes.
So if we look to put that either on January, March, or, well, if we need it, an extra February meeting, then we can.
Are you actually suggesting I have to call another extraordinary meeting when I try to get as many as I could this year?
Not necessarily, but I think if we try and keep it consistent with having the same sort of standing items on the same time of year, just to give officers warning.
I agree there. I think right now, looking at March, there's going to be a far off run, but it's basically, it'll be a year in 1 day, a year in 1 month and 6 days from the previous meeting. So I think pencil it in for March, because with January, we don't know how busy we're going to be with the finances, and we'll also have parking there as well. So at the very least, I'd pencil that in for March. Paul?
Thank you. Yeah, I would support having number 3, particularly very important with climate change. Mm-hmm. We need to get on top of that and make sure things are right going forward. I'd also support number 8 as well about the library provision. I think a lot's probably been learnt during COVID and changing ways in which library provision is actually implemented. It needs to be reflected in that. Number 10 is quite a huge parcel of work, and I think it needs to be just broken down. We've already said about the borough-wide parking management plan, which we can take for January 2022, and that takes in the car parking and parking on blind spots and bends and that sort of thing. And I think we need to also look at the sustainable transport side, which is the bus strategy, and also the cycling infrastructure, which we can link in with the LC whip as well, and the active travel plan. The other one which would be useful, I think, is the arts and culture strategy going forward, and that's going to change, but it needs to be looked at the right time, the appropriate time, which is probably going to be latter part of this year.
We did talk about when that was going to come back at a previous meeting.
Yeah, I think we talked about autumn time, weren't we?
Yeah, it was I'm certain it was the February meeting. Shirley, you're still on that, aren't you?
I am indeed. Well, as far as I'm aware, yeah. Yeah, I am still on there. Yeah.
A list of the 5 town responders provided. So I'm just flicking through the minutes as to when we would talk, because we did discuss, because we wanted to keep abreast of it, when it would be going.
I thought it was autumn time, but
I think you're right. I'm just trying to see if there was an actual specific date on the notes.
Yeah. We also have to bear in mind as well that 4 out of the 7 meetings that we've actually got listed deal with the MTFP.
Yeah.
And they do take up quite a large proportion of the agenda.
Indeed, that's why
we don't have a great lot of room to
yeah,
squeeze other things in.
it was always very much a because what we always did was we did the MTFP, and then we did some heavier items where it was initial strategy and planning and things like that, and then we did some lighter items in between. But I'm going to get strangled again. That's right.
If I could just come back on the sustainable transport side as well, it sort of links in with number 16 as well, which is scrutinising how WBC responds to complaints related to overgrown pavements. We want more people to walk. We need to make sure those pavements or footways are right. That could well be a task and finish group could do that. Separately.
I completely agree on the task and finish group in regards to pavement.
And they come back and report back, and this is the way things are. The other one, which I looked at the task and finish group, would be number 13, public toilet provision. I think that'd be a good one for a task and finish group. So those are the points that I was. Oh, the other one, I support what Clive was saying about the high-speed broadband as well. I think we need to understand where that's actually missing in the borough and what needs to be done.
I work for a global communications company, so thankfully I'm not involved in that particular aspect.
And the other one I would like to see, if we can squeeze it in, is reviewing our highway contracts.
Why did I think management wanted to look at that at some point? Or was that us? Can't remember.
It could be management, but I think it does need to be looked at.
I agree, it does need to be looked at, but I think, when did the contract start again? Going back through that's
I think Community and Corporate did look at.
We did. I'm trying to remember
whether that was then delegated to management. I don't know. I think the issue with work program item number 10 is, as Paul said, it's so heavy, and you could have an entire scrutiny committee just on, year in year out just on those items. So I think what the user committee decided to do last year was to pick 1 or 2 big items and sort of focus on them, not saying that you won't look at things as and when they happen, but have them so that you give the officers some direction and sort of some perspective on what they can be expected to provide. So I wonder whether it's just, again, setting yourself 1 or 2 big ticket items and then giving officers some time to prepare.
Yeah, well, we've covered off parking provision because we know that's going to be in January, and that will cover everything as in the parking aspect.
Yeah,
it's then effectively, because how long has the contract been in action now, the new roads contract? Because we definitely looked at it, and I honestly cannot remember when we did, because last year's a bit of a blur for everyone. It may have been 2019. So it is probably due for a...
Chairman, there is mention on page 21 of a review following the first 2 years of the Wakeham Highways Alliance. So would that be 2 years?
Yeah. Okay, so that's our point of entry then, is effectively to take that when the review of the strategy of the first 2 years is, and to ask to see that review when it's done. So we'll need to get clarity on when that is, and then we'll have to slot it in somewhere.
So we've got sort of 4 coming out of that: a mid-term review of the highways contracts, the bus strategy, the sustainable transport on cycling and walking, and also the borough-wide parking management plan. I think those are the key ones coming out from that.
Yeah, and the bus strategy and cycling infrastructure will have to. We won't be able to pencil in a date yet because we need to wait for the information to come down from central government. So, knowing our luck, that will probably come out in February of next year, because that's just the way that this runs. But I think those are 3 concepts that we can run with effectively.
So they were.
So that was. So it's the parking provision aspect, which is definitely January. We then look at the highways contract mid-year review when that comes up. So we need to find out that. And then it's the bus strategy and sustainable transport. Basically, once more information on that comes out as well. That was roughly it, wasn't it, Paul?
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, it's effectively the LC whip and the active travel agenda.
But that's it. I definitely agree we need to review on high-speed broadband. I think that would be a lighter, in inverted commas, lighter item. So that would be one I would definitely slot in. Oh, Shirley, were you indicating? Sorry, I missed you.
Yeah, thank you, Guy. A couple of things really crossed my mind is that from listening to Paul and to everybody else about what they'd like to see is that I think we're going to end up with extraordinary meetings that instead of the extraordinary meetings are talking about the finances, they're going to be talking about the other stuff. So because there's an awful lot of stuff here, but one of the things that strikes me is that some of these, as has been rightly pointed out, are huge. So reviewing highways, transport, blah, blah, is enormous. And then you get a funny little one that is scrutinising how WBC responds to overground pavements. I would like to see that one expanded a bit in many ways, because I think one of the complaints that we all get as councillors, I certainly hear a lot, is stuff that is the very basic councillor stuff, really, like street cleaning, overgrown pavements, alleyways blocked by overgrown hedges, all of those sorts of things that are, those little things are important to residents. And so I wonder whether we should be looking at having a bit more of a review on street cleaning and general pavement maintenance, that type of thing.
Street cleaning contract has come up before. Where did that come up?
Yeah, I mean, it might not be for this.
It's a separate contract, because it was a separate contract. Yes, Paul?
Yeah, it came up at management. It was one which we pushed for to have reviewed.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it has been
together with gully cleansing as well.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember when was that?
March time.
Yeah. So I think that's definitely been done, Shirley.
It's been done. Okay. I'll have a look.
It's definitely, Matt. I think that might be an issue too. Let me take the overgrown pavements and the gully cleansing and everything to management, because that might be one that we can kick back over to them, because they definitely did the contract, as Paul's right. So it's basically been a year. So maybe it's, if we did that March 2020, maybe it's a item for management in March 2022, February 2022, because then it's been effectively 2 years since it was last looked at, and it's looking at it from that point of view. So I think that maybe want to refer back to management. Oh wait, I can see Neil waving at the back. No, that's right.
If I can help, this issue came up at the Borough Parish Forum when we met in April, and the highways people said that the contractor is putting together a list of particular issues around pavements, and if members want to submit details to, it was Andy Glencross who was at the meeting. If members want to submit details of specific issues around this, it can go on the list, and then the contractor is working their way through the list. So that might be a short-term solution to this.
That sounds reasonable to me as a start for 10, and then we can look at it towards the end of this year, or if management wants to take it up again. If management has dealt with it before, we can look at it again. Alison.
It seems to me that 16 and 17 are quite closely related, because 16's about how the council responds to complaints, and then there's a specific kind of complaint. And 17 is about how we communicate and engage with our residents. And communication is something that OS management has often had on the programme we haven't actually got round to. So I think the way that we do communicate and respond to our residents is a really important issue to look at.
Yeah, I completely agree. Shirley, you were still indicating as well?
I was actually, yeah. I was also going to mention what Alison has just mentioned about communication and engagement with the reliance, I guess, on these days, anyone who's signed up for an email gets information, and those who haven't signed up for an email tend to miss out. But the other thing I was just going to mention was that during the course of the last couple of years, when we have people in to talk to us about things and we scrutinise them, there have been a number of people have said, oh, we'll have you back. And for example, we had the Bain Forum last year, and we said, you know, we'd have them back. And I can't recollect any others, but I know there are certainly some that we've said, oh yes, we'll have you back in 6 months or a year to see how that's gone. So I think we don't want to overlook those people that we had already kind of.
I completely agree with that. Did Bain go to management again? I can't remember.
That forum in particular, I think at the moment is under review. I think the localities team are working with those individuals and sort of looking at a way forward. But I do keep an eye on all of the topics that are in the minutes that say they will come back, and I am periodically emailing officers. But quite often, if you're not hearing an update, it's because there simply isn't one. But yeah, it's definitely on my end of things. But yes, that the BME forum in particular is undergoing review, sort of going forward. So yeah.
Okay, that's fine. And the other thing that I thought might be helpful in terms of the fact we've got some new members on the committee is to reiterate or to go through this list and just say which ones we definitely have to talk about and that we have to scrutinise. I mean, I think it's probably 1, 2, 3, and 7 are ones that are definitely ours, but there are probably some that I've missed out there.
Yeah, go ahead, Callum, and then we'll go to Paul.
So one, the budget isn't actually statutory, but it is in as much as, you know, it's something the committee does do every year. Community safety partnership absolutely has to be looked at. Flood risk management has to be looked at. And you said, which was the other one you said, Shirley? That's not statutory, no.
That's been my pet project, effectively, on this committee's. It's been working at burials for some bizarre reason.
Off the top of my head, the other one is working with the police and the fire service. We get an update from them. So that's the other one that the committee has to statutorily look at. There might be another one, but yeah.
Comes under number 2, doesn't it?
Yes.
I think what about generally partnerships? There's more of a general thing about partnerships, I believe, that we should be looking at, not just the safety partnership. And maybe it's number 5.
Yeah, that is an aspect. That would be an interesting one to do, because that's a topic where right now it's very much sitting like how the burial capacity, because that started from one report in 2019, in which we found out we basically had about 6 months of burial capacity left, and suddenly everything kicked off. So I think it might be worthwhile actually doing that as reviewing the effectiveness of the council's partnerships with towns and parish councils in the voluntary sector, etc. Maybe we put that one in for the 1st of September and basically ask officers to give us an update on how we do that, how we drive the partnerships, the voluntary sector, both the parishes, and effectively how we're responding to the issues raised. Maybe this is something that also we could look to the Borough Parish Forum to give us some content from as well. And so if we invite the chair along to that for the September meeting, and then once we get that report, we can then basically look to drill down into where we can improve things and basically try and replicate what we did with burials in that regard. Does anyone have any objection to that in that timescale? I think we have an item there for September then. Is that okay? Does that sound like what you were thinking, Shirley?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it's quite important. It would just be really useful to know how many partner organisations that we have and what kind of partnerships we have. I think it's probably a bigger area than we all think.
I agree. We probably know what's going on in our little patches, but not the borough as a whole. Paul.
Thank you. I'm a little bit unclear now on what direction number 16 is going, because 16 and 17, although there is a link there, 17 is specific that there is a major problem, and it's partly to do with street sweeping, because the street sweeping hasn't been done properly when it comes to the footways. So then you get detritus along the sides of the footway, then that turns into grass, and then the overgrown vegetation comes over and the footway gets narrower and narrower and narrower, and it needs to be sorted out. And when people try to report it, it doesn't get cleared properly, and this is where it all starts from. And that's why the overgrown pavements was a key issue, but it does link in with street sweeping as well. And I don't want it sort of disappearing and getting lost in number 17.
Yeah, I think 17 is, I think personally with 17 and 16 is an example about how 17 should be done, improved or whatever. So I don't disagree with that. I think before I say anything else on that, should we move number 13 to HOSC? Give them something to do.
As the chairman of HOSC and as the person who proposed that question as something to be scrutinised, I'd be quite happy with that. Because I think one specific part would be making sure that we were providing for the needs of everybody, but some people have greater needs than others.
Indeed. So I think that one definitely goes to HOSC. I think Paul's right here. I think we might need a task and finish group on overgrown pavements, just so that we can, and maybe work with the Borough Parish Forum on that regard. When did Neil? When did you say that the feedback was due to happen on that in regards to the street sweeping and things like that again?
In terms of the overgrown pavements issue,
yes.
So it was reported at the Borough Parish Forum that this is already a piece of work that's underway.
Right.
So if members have specific areas or issues, if they want to contact Andy Glencross, who's the Assistant Director for Highways and Transport, he will then get it onto the list which the contractors are looking at and working their way through. That was the process that was described at that meeting.
Okay, I think I'd like, if we can get Andy to give us a copy of that report when it's done, we can then come back to this and decide if we need to do a task and finish group once we've actually got that report, or if we then need to haul him in directly and put everyone over the hot coals in here. If there's actually a process that's working, then we can use a task and finish group to review and scrutinise it. If something's clearly not working, he can come and present to all of us, as it were. Does that sound satisfactory to you, Paul?
It's a system at the moment that's clearly not working. And I think what Andy's trying to do is gather together some evidence of where there's some problem areas and tackle those, but that does not tackle what the problem is. And I want to see a way of tackling that problem.
I don't disagree.
Which is slightly different.
Yeah, I don't disagree. So let's let him get the report together. We can then get a copy, and then we can make the decision of task and finish. Let's help him help himself, as it were, or right, we need to fully grill, and then you need to tell us what's going on and how we can help, etc. Yeah,
could we put a time limit on when we're going to get that report?
Yeah, I think we need to.
I don't want it dragging on.
I completely agree. We need to make a call on that by September, I think. So if we can get the report in the next few weeks, we can then decide. I can use my powers to basically add it onto the agenda for September if needed as an emergency item. So yeah, basically he's got a month or two to give us a report. If not, we then add it. Okay, let's actually put some dates to these things now. So for June, we've got the Community Safety Partnership updates from executive have asked for the COVID recovery. So that is going to be Stuart, isn't it? No, it's a Stuart.
Yeah, you asked for Stuart to come to that meeting, and I was also, so you've received, obviously today you've had Parry, you've had Pauline, you've had John. The only directorate you haven't had, which hasn't provided, but said they will provide for the next one, is Communities Insight and Change. And obviously that's quite important. Also talking about reviewing how we communicate and engage with residents, because that's a big part of their portfolio, because obviously they have the communications team within them. So the suggestion was they would provide a document similar to this, and then just come along and just be there for again, a bit like tonight, just some member questions if you had any specific questions of any of the key items in their sort of project plan for the year.
So effectively from that, what we can do is then look at item number 17 on how we communicate and engage with residents. We can come with questions on that, and we can then basically dial down on what topics we want to talk about in greater detail, such as a social media communication. How are we responding from a phone call point of view? How is emails doing? How are we doing letters from planning applications? All sorts of things we can drill down to in that. So that then gives us the ability to thermal that one down. Does anyone else have anything they want to see potentially for June initially? Shirley?
Can I just ask a question about who overviews and scrutinises the kind of the planning process, not the actual approving the plans. I know that the process is, but the process for informing residents and the process of consulting does that ever get scrutinised?
It's probably classified under communication, isn't it? Because it's consultation process and things like that. We've done it in the past about consultation processes back. God, I think maybe back in 2016, 2018. Can't remember when. So it is part of it, but that is an aspect that we can do on the communication with residents part of effectively. Okay. How do I mean, with a planning application, the most common method is you walk by something and happen to see a poster put up in someone's garden 9 times out of 10.
Exactly. You would think, but some telecoms operators with the 5G rollout can actually, put up put up masts and things like that. And there's no legal requirement for a notice to be put up at the site where a mast might be proposed. And this obviously is very vexing to residents who find out
exactly what mast you're talking about.
Well, I've 3 masts in my ward, so I'm becoming quite an expert on telecommunications masts and the planning implications of them. But it occurs to me that with the relaxation of planning laws and with more permitted development, people are going to find more and more things being built, and they've had no notification at all, no time to get used to it, and suddenly some monstrosity is built. I mean, I actually had a lady ring me up who, the first she knew that her neighbours were under permitted development, were putting up a building at the end of their garden, was being woken up at 7:30 in the morning by bulldozers, diggers.
Yeah, that's where the process falls down, because the number of times you see a notice and I never had something put through my door, because immediate neighbours are always supposed to be informed, and 9 times out of 10, yes, it could be the case that the notice was shoved in and was bundled up with the junk mail and residents didn't spot it. But is there a process to make it clearer that it is a planning notice?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking, that something, that the envelopes that go out will probably just say to the occupier. And as you say, if they end up with a load of pizza leaflets and things like that, they're not obvious. Whereas if the envelope said something like urgent planning notification or something like that, it would at least draw people's attention to it. So we as councillors don't get people ringing us up saying, I've not been told about this. And with regard to that, the mast, one of the masts I had, apparently 9 households were sent a letter, and not one of those households, not one single household, said that they got one. And I can't believe that all of them threw it away with the pizza leaflet.
It definitely fell into the pizza delivery section.
Well, could well have done, yeah. But I just wondered if it's something that we should be informing and protecting our residents to some extent.
Can we ask for an update just on how the process is done for June then, about planning notification, as it were? Because if they're coming anyway, we might as well ask for just a quick update on how the process should be done. If we've then got, and I'm certain we can all tell stories of where it hasn't been followed, it then gives us the director in a chance to basically fix it before we then look at it in greater detail.
Yes, we can. That is a different, although it's communication with residents, that is place and growth. So that will be a different directorate, and it is a bit short notice. But I can certainly ask the officers.
It shouldn't take them too long to put.
So I can certainly ask the officers and see if they're happy to come along and just do a quick.
Yeah, because I'm just aware that June we might be a little light in that regard. So
well,
if we got a little report, even if it's just a one in the document, we can then discuss it at the end of it.
So we've got community safety. We've got updates from Community Insight and Change. We've got Stuart coming along, hopefully, to talk about COVID recovery. What I've also got for the other months just written down is I've got not a lot for September. It doesn't look like
libraries. I want libraries.
You want libraries in September rather than October. That's fine. I had it down for October. So
well, I just think that I just think either September or October is.
I've got arts and culture for either October or November. Again, this is discussion with officers. So that's reviewing the strategy as it's being implemented. I've got let's have a look here. So for the March, so for the 5th of January meeting, that's the parking. The parking plan. For March, I know we're skipping to the end here, but for March we've got probably flood risk, and also there's probably when we'll get our annual update from the fire authority. I'll try and invite them along again. So we've also got broadband and sport and leisure strategy, but I think I need to go away and I need to talk to the officers and the directorates and sort of see when we can.
And we can slot them in.
Slot them in when will be best. The only other thing that I've written down that we haven't really talked about, Alison touched on it earlier, was the crematorium and sort of how that all links in with burial provision. Again, if that's something the committee wants to keep looking at, I can again go away and talk to officers and sort of see when we can fit that in. That might be maybe a December item potentially.
I've got no objection to that, simply because I think the next stage is basically when planning applications come in and things like that. So that's when we need to understand from that. Alison, you were indicating.
Yeah, we haven't talked about 15 yet, which is looking at council-owned companies and shared service arrangements. And I just wanted to zoom in on the shared service arrangements because building control obviously is being disaggregated. A new arrangement should be in place as soon as possible post-September. I just thought perhaps we should be looking at that before September. To make sure, well, obviously add value, but make sure the new building control service is, the best value for money and the best service we can give our residents.
Yeah, that's due to happen in September, is it?
The only option would be an extraordinary July or August.
I tried to make this diary so that we didn't have an extraordinary meeting. Can we talk to officers, make sure we can get that in for potential extraordinary in July? Sorry, everyone. Sorry, you can blame the vice chair.
And of course, there's the PPP as well.
There is the PPP as well. So that is maybe that as well, potentially extraordinary in July. No one go on holiday. Not that anyone can go anywhere anyway. Which that is a valid point. Even if you are abroad, because I intend to keep these as hybrid, hence my laptop here as well, so I can see if hands shoot up on that. So if you are away, I still expect you to dial in. In that regard, okay. So we've got potential on the PPP and other shared services arrangements for an extraordinary meeting in, I'm just going to say July right now. Next June's meeting, we've got Community Safety Partnership, executive updates, COVID recovery, and hopefully a report of some description about planning, notification process, etc. We'll think of a better idea about that. September, we've got looking at libraries, and also we've then got I suspect that the broadband strategy and things like that will start to appear in those periods as well. Then we're going in, and then November, December, something will get slotted in depending on what's going on in activity. Parking provision is the big one for January, and flooding is the main one in March, together with the fire update.
And then obviously the overgrown pavement.
And then the overgrowth pavements, yes, which they need to come back in. That needs to come back in September, providing that they've the answers to our satisfactory. If not, it's a working group. Yes, Clive.
How about having a discussion with the local police superintendent? I know that the chief constable comes to the council and we ask him a few questions, and it's always quite nicely done.
She's coming next week and next month.
Oh, is she?
Yes, that's the community safety partnership. The police is coming to that after we had a bit of a Barney over email because we were hoping to get her to this meeting.
Yeah, Felicity Parker's due to come on the 21st to talk primarily about community safety partnership, but she's obviously available to answer questions about local policing as well on that day.
We originally asked. That was the purpose for this meeting originally, was to get her along to talk about that, and we just got pushed back, I think is the best way of describing it, due to various conflicts of timing and other things. So it was asked. I think we might ask again, just to try and get them along to the fire one in March as well.
I'm sure you can push back very effectively, Guy.
I think my response to her directly was somewhat blunt. I wasn't too impressed, but unfortunately she just couldn't attend this evening and said I can be there for community and safety partnership, but I want to be there. So we'll push back and ask for March for her to attend for that with the fire as well, so that way we can get both of them at the same time. That's what I think it's going to be the easiest. Yes, Paul?
Thank you, Guy. There's two areas we have spoken about, but we haven't actually got anything tied down to a date at the moment, which was the bus strategy.
Yep.
And the cycling infrastructure and LC WIP.
Yep.
So I think those need to be timed, whatever the officers are going to say.
Yes.
About those ones. The other two, which we spoke about when Pauline was here, was the low emissions transport strategy, which is being developed, and the EV charging strategy.
Yeah, which
and again, I think we need to get those in somewhere.
So we need
within our very busy programme.
Yeah, we need to understand what the timescales are, because it may be that EV provision also comes under parking provision.
I just don't want those lost.
No. So we've got that makes us what, 6 or 7 items that are floating until we get more update, and we've got some fixed items as well going forward. So we've at least filled out the base of the agenda. Does anyone have anything else they wish to add? We're going to be covering a lot again this year, but then again, I don't think this committee has ever not had a light year. Which that's a testament to this committee and its work effort personally. Yes, Alison?
I just wanted to ask which executive members will be coming to the next meeting, because it was very useful to be able to speak directly to Pauline, John and Parry. And I wondered if Bill might be coming to the next meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Alison. I haven't asked him yet, but that's the intention. It will be Bill, and potentially if we can get someone to come about planning it, might be useful to get Wayne to come along as well about the separate item. But yeah, I will definitely be asking Bill.
And Stuart.
And yeah,
Stuart, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Right. Where was my train of thought going? It's derailed either way. So the only other aspect, just thinking about other business, as it were, is we did have a very close look at the budget last year for new members. I do recommend that you, if you have a spare few hours to go and watch some of the videos where we were looking at the budget last year, because I feel it will be very useful to understand how the process works. But also, it is going to be important that we do overview of the existing budget process. So this current budget. Yes, Neil?
Just to update you that the management committee agreed 5 lots of training for scrutiny members, and one of those was on budget scrutiny. So it's about fixing a suitable date, and I assume the members of this committee will be quite interested in attending that one.
if you're not, if people are not attending that training, because it was very useful when we last had it in 2018, 19. It was very useful. I suggest everyone does it, and if people don't attend it, you're buying Neil stuff. You're buying Neil a nice bottle or something, because these are very hard to arrange, especially in these more difficult circumstances. But going back to my original thought was, if there is any item on where we were talking about the budget last year that we feel that we need to have come to get an update, such as school transport, that was a big area of conversation last year. Please do let me know. I'm also going to be looking at it from this point of view. We may need to slot that in as well, because that is the overview part of the overview and scrutiny, is looking at things that are currently in flight, such as burial and also the sports and leisure changes, etc. Right. Okay, Shirley, yes.
I just wanted to add one more thing. As preparation for this meeting, I kind of looked back through some previous agendas and minutes of previous meetings, just to see the kind of things that had been discussed in the past and before I was on this committee. And one of the things that I came across in September 2018, there was a piece about the PPP. A considerable amount of scrutiny went into the business plan of the PPP. And it was quite interesting, because the whole thing was looked very upbeat, and the minutes from the committee, everybody, you know, seemed very keen on it. And I've just been a bit controversial here, but I can't understand why it's now suddenly 3 years down the line is no longer. All those kind of optimistic things and the good governance and all the aims have all gone out the window, and we never had another opportunity to scrutinise that before any decision was made.
I think in that regards, I think, when did you join the committee, Paul? Was that 2018 or was that 2019?
I joined in 2019.
Yeah. So I think
I chaired the PPP in 2016, and it was jolly good when I was chairing.
I think I'm just looking. I think it's only me and Clive that are the members of this committee that were at that meeting that was still there. I do remember that. It was optimistic. I think the best way of describing it is to quote a certain French general, that no plan survives first contact with the enemy, as it were. Yes, Callum.
And I think that's what we're trying to get done with this first meeting here. What we've done differently to try and get exec members to come along and sort of outline milestones that they're hoping to achieve in the year, whether that's strategies, whether that's policies, whether that's existing items of business that they're progressing. So I think that's what we're going to try, and the model we're going to try and do going forward is every year have a meeting penciled in to get an update and to try and have a better idea, so that things aren't just, I mean, things will happen, and there will come a point where decisions have to be made quickly, and there's no way around it. But as much as possible, get a much better sort of horizon scanning view of the big things that are going to be happening, so that they can be scheduled in well ahead of time.
Yeah, that's the plan going forward. Okay. Right. With that, I think we can close the meeting down, Callum. So thank you very much. Oh, wait, Neil's waving.
Just to say that members may wish to note, on the 15th of June, we're running the first scrutiny training session, which will be online, and it will be a refresher for existing members and an introduction for new members. So details will come round very shortly. 7 o'clock start online.
th of June, you said, right? Oh, I will not be in attendance for that one, I don't think. I think I'm maybe out of the country. Okay, right. Thank you for that, Neil. With that, thank you very much for everyone attending, in spite of us all being here and us shouting at each other. I draw the meeting closed at 21:10 exactly. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much if you are watching online. Have a very good rest of your evening.